Hey everyone, hope your day's going well. Today we're going to check out 13 things from the 1960s kids today will never understand. I'm not exactly a kid, but I wasn't alive during the 60s either. So I'm looking forward to learn a little bit about these things. And I don't know if I'm going to understand them. That's the beauty of it. And, I'll always be a kid at heart. And my mom was born in the 60s. So to her, I'm a kid. So I qualify for this video. I qualify for not understanding. Let's jump into this one.
There are many things that are completely unique to the 1960s. If you grew up during that time, then you know how different they are from today. Entertainment, culture, and just basic daily routines have changed drastically. So here are 13 things
Hey,
from
the
the
Beatles.
1960s that
Love
kids
them.
today would never fully understand.
Fully, of course. Of course.
Imagine waking up every
Sleeping?
single morning, putting on your wristwatch, and then having to wind it so that it kept the time. This is what
Oh,
most people did if they wore a watch, because battery-powered watches were still quite new, and they weren't widely available yet. This was also a time when learning to read a clock was essential, because they often only displayed hands that pointed to Roman numerals or tick marks. Today,
it still is. But of course, the watch. Yeah, that's a different thing. I had one when I was a kid. That was like the first gift that made me feel like a grown up was a watch. uh, and I had to wind it up. It was even before I could read the time. So great memories, and of course, if you're a watch collector, you'll understand. But it's not the same. Never fully understand. My daughter is currently learning the clock, and she's learning both the analog and the digital. And actually, she got a grip much faster on the analog clock than the digital one. She has like more trouble with the digital one. Uh, so it's very interesting, but it's great to get to learn it with her.
you might
It's
be
it's fun.
surprised to learn that there's a generation of kids that are unable to read analog clocks because they have grown up never needing to.
Really? So in America, so I'm in Belgium. Some people might already know this. I mentioned this quite a few times, but YouTube always recommends videos to new people. Uh, I'm not only not from the 60s, but I'm also not from the US. So there's always going to be differences, just based on a different country. We still have to learn this in school. Do kids in the US not learn analog clock anymore?
If we think about all the extremes we go to with pregnancy today, like no caffeine, no deli meat, making
No
sure we take the right
caffeine.
vitamins and supplements, and generally avoiding anything that might harm the baby. But back in the
No,
1960s, mothers didn't change much about their lifestyle after becoming pregnant. If she smoked prior, then she most likely continued to smoke. And if she drank alcohol, well, then that usually continued too. Of course, our mothers weren't intentionally trying to hurt us, because the dangers of these habits weren't fully recognized. It is funny to look back at photo albums, though, to see mom fully pregnant with a cigarette in her hand.
yeah, but we just know more things about smoking. It's just not good ever, really. And I used to love getting a little bit smoke in my lungs. Voluntarily put smoke in your lungs. Like when you go into a building, when there's a building on fire, the first thing you do is like, "Ooh, I can't smoke." We're just, I was loving it, putting smoke in my lungs voluntarily. It's kind of weird if you think about it that way. But nowadays, I need a little bit too many rules around this, like no caffeine. Like, really, you can't have a cup of coffee when you're pregnant. We don't really have that in Belgium. I don't think that caffeine was not recommended, at least not over the top, but that's a general statement for everybody. Raw meats and something, stuff like that. I know they say that.
Recollection Road is proud to partner with
Really?
Legacy Box. Get early access to the best deal this
Get it.
holiday season, and then visit Legacy.
Go get
During
it
the
if you want.
1960s, the most common way to get to school in the morning was to use your 2 feet and get walking. There was no carpool, and it didn't matter that you were only 6. We were sent off to school
Yeah,
on our
man.
own and taught how to find our way. Sometimes you tagged along with siblings or a neighborhood kid who walked the same route. So you weren't always totally alone, but parents didn't hesitate to hand you your lunch and send you on your way. Today,
True.
very few kids still walk. They either ride the bus or their parents find the time to wait in long lines just to drop off and pick up kids. Have you seen some of the car lines at schools these days?
I guess
One of the
that's
great
similar
things
to
about
here.
walking home from school is that you could always make a pit stop at a store for some candy. Back then, a
Oh
bit of
yeah.
loose change could get you a nice sized bag of candy. You could also hang out and get an ice cream soda, a malt, or an egg cream. And you could
Candy
straddle up to the
cigarettes.
counter and drink it just like a grown up. From an early age, kids learned about earning, counting,
True.
and spending real money, which is something lost on kids today. Now
That's
kids
true.
seem to think that plastic credit cards are the only way to pay for things.
Well, it's gonna be. It's gonna be, so yeah. They won't really know cash anymore, I guess. In the 90s I still could go, I went to school, on foot. It wasn't that far. It was only like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, didn't really have to cross any big streets. But now we live quite far from school, so my daughter couldn't. She could go to school, but she would have to walk like half an hour, 40 minutes or something. So yeah, so distance is a thing. Safety is a different thing. Much more cars, much more creepers on the street. Come on, we gotta admit. Come on, hey, don't sugarcoat it either, because we definitely could
During the
get some sugar on the way to
1960s,
school.
toys came with a bit of risk. From science experiment kits that gave off toxic fumes to plastic
Oh,
melting ovens like the Thing Maker, kids learned early that
that's
life was
wild.
dangerous and you had to be careful when using certain toys. Back then, a BB gun was considered a toy, and everybody wanted
Hey,
one. Today,
let's
toys
go.
that pose a choking hazard are pulled from store shelves. But kids in the 1960s were built differently. They didn't mind the burns, scrapes, and scars. They were seen as badges of honor.
Yeah. I wish I grew up in the 60s. When I was a kid, I was watching American TV so much. And like Full House and stuff. They had what easy bake ovens. And how do kids have ovens? I wanted that. I wanted to bake my own stuff, but they didn't have it over here. Come on, man. We had the easy bake. Kids could just bake their own treats. Love it.
In the 1960s,
Was it any
backpacks
good though?
weren't a thing yet, so kids would carry their school books in their hands or under their arms as they walked to school. So not only did they walk to and from school, but they lugged around textbooks, folders, and papers in their sweaty mitts rather than having the luxury of a bag they could strap on their shoulders. It would take until the
bag is an improvement.
1970s before backpacks became a thing.
A bag is kind of an improvement.
Watching
guys.
movies was a different experience in the 1960s. There was no instant access to popular movies. We had to wait for them. That's because local downtown theaters only had 1 or 2 screens, and the movies would rotate
Yeah.
out every week or two. For most of us, there were no multiplexes showing every single recently released movie, and malls were
Psycho,
just coming
man.
into existence.
Classic.
We did, however, have drive-in theaters, which gave us another option for catching a movie on the weekend.
Yeah, these are things that never really made it to Belgium. They, like drive-in theaters, with the speakers on the side and stuff where you had to put it in your car. That's the thing we never had. Not really. Maybe once in a while, some person that saw this in America would organize things like that. But we never. That's a cool thing. That I always like. Wow, that's cool, man. Just going out with your car, the comfort of your own car, bring your own snacks and stuff, and have a date. Uh, that looked always very cool to me. We never had them, but I do remember, movie theaters. Instead of having trailers, you just had the posters, right? And you go and look from one side to the other side, and I would jump around like, "What movie are we going to watch?" We didn't know. You just went there and see what was on, just to the spur of the moment thing, uh, instead of being bombarded with so many commercials. Uh, that was a different, and you had lines around the block, like when Titanic. in '97 release. So I guess with these movies like Star Wars in the '70s or '80s, like Raiders of the Lost Ark and stuff, it was more like an event. It was more like an event. You don't really have event films anymore. Which is kind of a shame.
One thing about the 1960s that would shock young men and women today was the military draft. With the Vietnam War raging throughout the decade, young men that were 18 would be drafted into the Army to fight in one of the most difficult wars on record. There were some who dodged the draft, but by and large, that generation of young men stepped up, served, and for some, gave up their life to defend their country. Can you
Man.
imagine if there was a draft imposed on today's young people? Although Americans still have to make sure to register with the Selective Service, lucky for them, the draft has not been needed ever since.
Yeah, that's we here in Belgium. The draft was until the 1990s, somewhere in the 90s. You had to do 1 year of service. They usually wouldn't send uh, those people into combat, because there wasn't really war. But uh, I know a lot of people, all the whole generation, like from my parents and a little later, up until the 90s, uh, people did their duty. It's great for discipline. This it's a mixed bag. People say bring it back or not. Ah, man, I get it with discipline and stuff, but then when it comes to your own children, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know if I could do it. I would love, you know, to do it myself, right? For the training and stuff. Not go to active combat, of course, not, never. But just the training and discipline, I do like that aspect of it. Even though I cannot handle authority, but I do like certain challenging myself. So it's a mixed bag. It's always a mixed bag for me because uh, peace, man. That's the way to go. But training is a different thing, and discipline. I do like that aspect of it. But the war, if
Ever
you watch my other
since.
channel, you know how I feel about that.
Remember the joy kids felt when they cracked open the red egg that contained silly putty? You could bounce
Oh,
it
what
or
is
stretch
this?
it, and the fascination with using it on newsprint to make an exact copy of your favorite comics was
That's
priceless. They
cool.
do still sell silly putty, but very few households even have newspapers lying around. And kids today certainly aren't reading the comic strips, so the popularity of
Oh,
silly putty is nothing like it was back in the 1960s.
oh, wow, that's awesome. I want that. Well, hey,
With TV programming,
that is awesome. Uh, we never had that, but we did have, a newspaper where each week, uh, there's a page with a comic, and I collected comics. And this particular Belgian comic called Jommeke was each Wednesday in the Volkskrant. You could get it at Volk, the people. It was really, and I would get that newspaper each week, man, just for the comics alone. Oh, that's how I traveled around the world. Because this kid, he was only like 11. He would go around the world solving some problems. He never aged either. Oh,
still
let's
being
have some
fairly
TV dinner.
new, the idea of watching TV while eating dinner was a breakthrough for the
Let's
Swanson
go.
Company. The first
Yeah,
TV
yeah, yeah.
dinner came in a divided foil container that you heated up in the oven, and they became a fixture in family freezers across the country. The
Oh man,
novelty of it
TV
made
dinner
Swanson TV dinners huge, and other
is heaven on
companies
earth.
began to offer their own versions. The idea was especially popular with working moms, and it became a staple of the middle class American family. This was as close to having pre prepared food delivered to your home as you could get, because there were no food delivery options at the time. Can you imagine? Speaking
What I always like about the US and, just taking ideas and running with it, man. I've always respected that aspect of it. It is like the DNA of people uh seeking adventure, right? Going to the new world. So I always like they have an idea and then they, you know, if there's people from the US watching, you just go for it, man. I love that. Here in Europe, we're always a little bit more pulled back and is this gonna work or and then no, just go for it, man. TV dinners, man, we never had it. We of course we have like microwave stuff, and but we all these trays. Hey, come on, man. Even though it might not be the healthiest thing, I wish we had some TV dinners back in the day.
Speaking of food, the
What is
60s
this?
offered some foods
I've
that
seen
would
this
turn the
before.
stomach of many
No.
young people today.
Come
Jello
on.
now is just
No,
a dessert,
don't. No.
but back then it was an entire meal.
No,
Our moms
no, no.
experimented with putting anything in Jello, and I mean anything. If you
Man,
find a
I've
cookbook from
seen
the
this.
1960s, you can bet it's going to have some type of ham, vegetable, or fish gelatin mold in it. And if you had a
What?
mom that made you finish your dinner before leaving the table, well then, you were probably going to be there for a while.
Here, have a slice of everything. See, that's what I mean. You know, even I might not find this appealing. It's still that spirit of, hey, this is an idea. Even if it falls flat or if it doesn't stay, I love that spirit of entrepreneurship. That's the word. You know, like let's just invent stuff. Let's just make it and see if it works or not. Let's just do it. Yeah. Well, you got a whole meal
If you
in
grew
one
up
slice.
in the 1960s,
kinda genius.
westerns were everything to a young boy. John Wayne
Oh, we
was
got
starring
John
in
Wayne
motion
over here.
pictures, and shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza were what you were watching on TV.
Yeah,
Bonanza was
Gary
also the
Cooper.
very first western that was broadcast in color, so it was always fun to find someone in the neighborhood who had a color TV. And if you weren't watching
Awesome.
Bonanza, you were outside with your cowboy hat or coonskin cap on and a cap gun strapped to your side. Not sure the last time I saw a kid playing outside with a cap gun, but in the 1960s, all of us did. Getting your first job in the
strong silent
1960s meant that you were paid a whopping $1 to
Oh,
$1.50
paper
per
routes.
hour. This was still a big achievement and meant that you could now earn some spending money that exceeded the change collected from returning cans and bottles. For teenagers during this time, a minimum wage job was more than just earning money. It taught them how to be a good employee that started with wearing a clean and pressed uniform, being punctual, and working hard. The last time I was at McDonald's, the sign read $15 per hour starting pay. The employees, however, were wearing street clothes, and I waited 20 minutes for the wrong order. Ah, how times have changed. Let me know.
Oh man, you know what I love as well is like the paper routes, the lemonade stands, all of that. I always enjoy that. But you know, if you do it here in Europe, maybe now in the US, you put the kid on the corner with some lemonade, they're gonna come. Oh, have you got any permits for this? And oh, you need some taxes. What taxes on what? On 50 cents? Get out of here with. Oh, come on, man. Like, let the kids have some sense of entrepreneurship and work and understanding how money works. And, you know, all these regulations, you know, you're just going to have kids hopping in a circle.
Know in the comments if I missed anything, and make sure to sign up for the Recollection Road newsletter using the link in the description.
Hey, I like this video, man. That's cool.
Recollection Road and
We learned some things, and, you know, there's a lot of cool stuff that I saw in this video that I kind of wish would still be around. And of course, nostalgia plays a big factor. We still had some of these things in the 90s, you know, and trends from the US always came to Belgium and Europe. It always would take a few years. But that has shortened and shortened and shortened. Some things never came around, like I mentioned a few things. Some things I'm glad they didn't come around. Some things I wish we would have had. And, you know, with the internet and all that, you know, it's just usually trends almost make it at the same time. So there's good stuff about that. There's, you know, things that aren't so great. What are you going to do? Technology is like a speeding train. You're not really stopping anything. So we better get on it and adapt. But it's cool to keep these things alive, man, and remember some of these things or learn about them if you never knew about them. So I learned a lot. Looking forward to more of these type of videos. Hey, thank you for being here and spending some time with me. I truly appreciate it. I hope to see you in another one. Have a great day. Goodbye.